In this movie, we're going to continue on where we left off in the last segment, and we're going to complete our discussion of the pen tool by talking about handles and corner points. I actually have the same mask here. If you select the solid layer or the mask itself in the timeline, you'll see it here in the composition panel. Right now, the mask is currently selected, so we're seeing it. But we're not seeing those crazy handles we saw at the last movie because this point is not selected. So if we click on that point, then we'll see these handles. Now, what we might need to do is click away from it to deselect it, and then click back on it to reselect it so only it is selected. And by the way, if you want to continue onward with this path, you could just simply select this anchor point, this corner point here, and then select the pen tool and click and drag, and it continues the path. Now I'm going to go back and select the regular selection tool up here in the toolbar at the top of the interface, and click on one of these points to select it. Now what happens is when you have a curved point, or when you have one point that has at least one curved side coming out of a side of that point, then you will get a direction handle that will control that curve. So if I pull this curve out, you can see that we're increasing the tension on that curve. And if I move it left or right, we're changing the direction on both sides of the curve. So keep in mind as you're playing around with the curve that both the direction and the size of those handles makes a difference as far as what those curves look like. Now in this case, we have a curve coming out of both sides of the anchor point, so we have two handles here. So this is considered a smooth anchor point. I'm going to take under the pen tool, you'll find the convert vertex tool. So I'm going to select that and come over here to this curve point here. Now if you click on this with the convert vertex tool, what it's going to do is it's going to convert it from a smooth point where there's curves coming out of each side to a corner point where there is a corner and there are no curves coming out of either side. And again, as you remember from the last movie, when you don't have any curves, you don't have any handles to play with. Now let's say we started with a corner point. What I could do is come over here with the convert anchor point tool and click and drag on it to drag out handles. So that's what happens if you click on a smooth point or a corner point. If you click on one of the handles, you'll notice that it will break it so much that you can adjust these curves independently. And this is how you can create things like hearts. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. I'm going to select this mask and then delete it a couple times there. And I'm going to go back and select the pen tool, and I'll click on the bottom up here, click on the top over here, come down for that point, come up for that point, and then come back down for the original point. So now let's tweak this a little bit. Let's select the selection tool and come down here, and this has actually become a corner point. But what you may want to do is go back to the convert vertex tool and click and drag on it and get two different handles here. And then with the convert vertex tool, break those handles so you can control them independently. So we have more of a curve coming out of the inside here. Now a general rule for these handles, because when I first started playing around with this when I was learning Illustrator, I was kind of like, well, how do you know where those lines are supposed to be? And the general rule of thumb is that they're supposed to be about a third of the way along the path. So let's select the selection tool. Like that would probably be about good right there. Now, of course, rules were made to be broken, and you might need to get a custom shape. If you're rotoscoping something, you might need to create a custom shape with the pen tool that you need to tweak these handles in such a way that that rule is completely broken. But that's just a general rule of thumb. So if I have a small handle on this side and a really big handle on this side, we'll often have a curve that is not really smooth and flowing and kind of balanced looking. So again, sometimes that's what you want, but just be careful about that. Now in this case, as we play with our heart here, what we can do is click on this corner point here, and let's say we decide we want more curvature in these angles down at the bottom here. I can select the convert vertex tool, click and drag out so I get these curve handles, but I don't want a round bottom here. I just want some curvature. So I can click on the convert vertex tool again and break these handles so we can create some kind of smooth, more artistic little hearts here. And again, we can play with these little handles until we get a nice smooth result. Now, obviously there's a lot more to mask making than just creating pretty little hearts. Again, we oftentimes create masks to isolate objects or to remove backgrounds, rotoscope, visual effects. I mean, really the list is endless. And sometimes for motion graphics, we really do want simple shapes like this.